Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again to review Fargo Season 5. This is just going to be an overall review of the season. I thought that maybe Safi wouldn't want to do this because tomorrow we're going to do something else. She's already talked about the season really, although I think she still needs to give a food review, so I will have her do that in the Batteries Not Included review tomorrow, because I really wanted to talk about this season overall. Now that I've seen the whole thing, I can look back, I can say what worked, what didn't work. Overall, was it a good season? Well, here's the thing. After season 4, they really needed a good season, okay? Because season 4 was so bad, and it really is bad. Really, really bad. It's so bad that, it just gets worse and worse, because, people kind of treat that season like it's an other, because it really is an other. When you think of Fargo, you think of seasons 1 and 2, and then I personally really like 3, for the most part, although it did get really goofy near the end, and then episode 3 of that season was terrible, but I actually really like season 3. But then season 4, who cares about that? So season 5 started off like it could have been really, really good. The first 2 episodes were amazing, and one of the things that I loved was the fact that instead of having really unlikable characters who are leading the show, like in season 4, where they had, let's see, who did they have? They had the Black Mob guy, the head of the Black Mob. He was unlikable, and he couldn't act because he was Chris Rock. You had the hot-headed Italian mustache guy. He wasn't likable. He was a dipshit and a jackass. You had Nurse Mayflower, she was evil, and then you had a racist, corrupt detective. So, none of those main characters are likable at all. The only character in that season who was actually likable was the U.S. Marshal, who was a side character who came in and then he got brutally killed and just terribly done in that season. In this season, though, Dorothy is a very good character. I really liked her a lot. She's a badass character without having to say that she's a badass character. But there are a lot of things now that I've seen the whole season that don't make sense. And primarily, her background was all mysterious until the 7th episode, which is the worst episode in Fargo history. But her background and how she's able to do the things that she's able to do, they don't make sense at all. She is this badass fighter who can make all these traps and things, and she can do all this stuff. She's a tiger apparently. Well, how in the hell was she able to learn all that stuff? How in the hell is she so good at everything and she's so perfect? She's basically probably one of the most badass characters in Fargo's history. And there's no reason for that at all. There's no actual reason for her good abilities, for her talents. It's just oh, she's Dorothy, she's a tiger. And it's sorry, that's not good enough. But the first 2 episodes were really good. They did a great job at bringing us into a new season and showing us that, hey, maybe this season could be really good. They set up a whole cast of great characters this season. There were very few characters this season that I didn't like. And I'll talk about the ones I didn't like later. I really loved Roy as a character, although he was kind of superficial. I really wanted him to be a deeper character because he was kind of like a cartoon. He was very funny at being a cartoon. Like there was one point where, he's getting ready to have all these pieces of shit people come to help protect the ranch from the police and the army and everything, and he's pretending that it's the deep state that's doing everything. And it's just stuff like that where you really can't take it seriously because it's like they're trying to parody real life, but at the same time they're not really showing like a realistic character. And so I had a problem with that too. There were also a lot of things this season that were not really explained very well, such as Munch's backstory. It took all the way until the 10th episode for that to be explained. Like, ever since episode 3, when they showed that random flashback of his ancestor, quote-unquote, like, ever since then, we got no, like, hint at what that was all about until the finale. And I just think that's bad storytelling. Another thing is the fact that in another episode, Roy is, like, staring at the ceiling, and he's able to, like, see Dorothy somehow. And it's weird because it's like they're implying that he's psychic or he's like Danny in The Shining or something. And so, like, that was really strange. It wasn't explained at all. If they had added that element, that could have been pretty cool, actually, but they didn't. And therein lies the biggest issue with this season, or one of the biggest issues, is that after episode 2, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so episodes that are trash. Or no, wait, no, 5. 5 or 6, yeah. 5 episodes that are just really, really trash, mediocre. Hardly anything happens at all. I mean, just really nothing. Like, they had all these great characters. You have Munch, this weird guy who's just really, he's like a wild card character, and he's really creepy. You had the Danish, the lawyer, who, he's got an eye patch, so that's kind of cool. And he's also, like, really strong and powerful. You got Lorraine, she's like a powerful, rich bitch who, like, you can't wait to see her get killed as well as Roy. You got Wit. And that's another thing, too. It's funny how, like, in Season 4, they had all these black characters, but then in Season 5, you just had this one black guy in Wit, and he could have had a really good story where he was, like, one of the heroes of the season, but instead, he literally disappears for the majority of the season, and then all of a sudden he comes back, and then he gets killed in the finale in a really stupid way that didn't make any sense at all. It was kind of like an insult to our intelligence. So yeah, I mean, this season was kind of a failure because it had all the right ingredients to make a great season, but it didn't really end up being a great season. Like, I can't say that I would watch the season again. Like, if I would watch anything from the season, maybe I'd watch episode 1, and then maybe episodes 8, 9, and that's it. Maybe the last part of the finale, but that's it. All the rest of the season, I'm never watching that again. I'm never watching these boring filler episodes where, they really didn't have to have filler. They really didn't have to have, like, all these episodes where nothing happened. Like, they could have done a great thing and added more story and fleshed out these characters, but you got none of that. Like, Gator, his character was, like, meaningless. He is the son of Roy, the villain. And his character literally got nothing until episode 9. And then all of a sudden in episode 10, he does one thing and then he leaves. And it's like, that's not good writing. Like, there's a lot of that too in this season, though, where it seems like the writers are more concerned with subverting expectations by doing the unexpected But the unexpected doesn't mean it also doesn't make sense or is like always unsatisfying. And that's where I think season 5 has gone the most wrong. Because like I think back to like season 1 where you had the two main police characters and their love story and how one of them accidentally shoots the other, which was really good. And then you had they survived the fucking season. And then you have Lester, and you think he's going to die, obviously, but he survives all the way until, like, the end of the season when he dies, and he actually defeats the bad guy himself. I mean, he was that cool. He was that badass of a character, even though, like, he was still a shithead, and he was still, like, a bad person for trying to get his new wife killed. That just, you can tell the quality difference between season 1 and season 5. You can tell, like, what was really a great show and what is really, like, a mediocre show that is just kind of full of itself. They're really full of themselves, the way that in this season there are 2 times where they spend an entire episode building up something to happen, and then the next episode, they don't follow through and they disappoint you. In episode 3, the whole episode, it's all about how, Dorothy and Wayne are going to protect their home. And they do all this build-up. They play this awesome music. They show this montage of the characters arming themselves. And it's like, oh, shit. This is going to be a really action-packed... Oh, never mind. We're going to do the unexpected, and we're going to have hardly anything happen. Everything just kind of fizzles out. The house gets set on fire. It's just kind of like a cartoon. That's not good storytelling. Maybe if you did it once, like maybe episodes 3 and 4, maybe if you'd done it that one time, and then the finale, you didn't do that. But then, in episode 9... which is probably one of the best episodes of the whole series. They spend the whole episode building up what could be an incredible finale where, they have this ranch. It's like this great Western setting. You have these great villains, and he's rounded up all these people to come fight for him. You got his wife, who, she's an abuse victim, but she's still, like, his wife, and she really loves him still. You have the father-in-law, you have Wit, you have the army, you have the police, you have all these different characters that were basically, like, put on this, like, board game, essentially. Like, they were all put around, placed strategically so that all of them could, collide with each other in the finale. And then what did they do in the finale? Nothing. Basically nothing. Nothing really happens. And then all of a sudden, it's over. Like, that is so unsatisfying and so disappointing. So this is probably the most disappointing finale out of all the finales in the Fargo series. Which that is really hard to beat, because another thing to mention is that in other seasons of the show, everyone who's done something illegal gets held accountable. Everyone. In season 1, even though Lester defeats the bad guy, he doesn't get away. He gets chased down by the police, and then he drowns when he runs on the ice to try to get to Canada. And then in season 2, Mike, even though he survives, he's got to work in that office forever. And then he might actually eventually get killed by the villain from season 1. Season 3, VM Varga gets arrested. Emmett gets killed in his own home. Nikki gets killed in like a Wild West standoff. Season 4, Chris Rock gets killed. Nurse Mayflower and the Mustache Man get killed. Everyone always faces consequences, but for some reason, in season 5, you have all these characters like Lorraine especially, who's like probably the most evil character or maybe the second most evil character on the show this season, and they don't face any consequences at all, and they don't get any sort of like comeuppance for what they've done the whole season. And I think that that's really bad as well, because it tells you that the people who make the show, they're not really in tune with what the show should be, like in seasons 1, 2, and 3. Or maybe just seasons 1 and 2, if you're a real, like, purist. They're kind of like, they have this mind of, like, Fargo is the specific brand now, and we gotta, go up our own asses, be very pretentious, be very full of ourselves, and just like keep subverting what we think that should happen or what the audience thinks should happen. And it doesn't always work. A lot of the times it's really like unsatisfying what they come up with, which leads to an unsatisfying show. Another really strange thing is episode 7. Episode 7, Linda, is probably the worst episode in the show's history. So that's another thing. This season has the worst episode in the show's history. That's pretty bad for the season. Because instead of giving us like a really good backstory episode where you see Dot and you see Linda, Roy's first wife, and you get to have, like, they could have done a really good episode of, like, the backstory and had all this explanation and had all these things make sense of why Dot is like this, what happened to Linda, what's Gator about. They could have really redeemed the show. But instead, they do this weird, pretentious thing that's very much like in season 4, when they did the Wizard of Oz ripoff episode, where Dorothy daydreams that she goes to a cult of domestic abuse survivors, and they all put on puppet shows. And it was something where it kind of felt like, is this because they don't want to show domestic abuse? And they have some sort of like a weird Hollywood agenda of like, oh, we can't show that. We can show all this murder. We can show all these good people getting brutally killed. We can show all sorts of these types of things, but we can't show a man hitting a woman, even though it happens multiple times in the season. So that's another really weird episode where they really squandered their chance, because like I think that they could have had some Emmys from doing like a backstory episode with good performances, like in Better Call Saul season 1, the 5-0 episode with Mike. That was like some of the best acting ever, and that it's notorious for how good that acting was. But instead, nope, we get puppet shows. Another thing that they did that was very, very queer, maybe this won't be like it on streaming, but maybe it will. You can tell the types of people who make this show by, number one, they have these captions. So at the beginning of every episode where there's domestic abuse in it, in some way, shape, or form, they have a caption at the beginning of the episode which basically warns you, the audience, that that's going to happen in the episode. So there's no, like, suspense or any sort of, like, drama over, like, oh, no, maybe Dorothy's going to get abused this episode. Oh, no, it's all, like, told to you. Yes, there will be domestic abuse this episode. And then in episode 9, there wasn't any caption, and it's like, oh, look, they just spoiled that. They just spoiled the fact that she won't get hit this episode, and probably nothing will happen to her because she's the main character. And you just spoiled that because you have this weird agenda where you have to be really protective about domestic abuse in television and movies when you're so unprotective when it comes to violence and all that type of shit. Very strange. Very, very strange choices. Because you think, like, yes, a domestic abuse victim could watch this show. But if they watched starting episode 7, that's really kind of like a weird thing that nobody really does. Like, if a domestic abuse victim watched this show, I would assume that they already watched episodes 1 through 6. So they would know that Roy is an abuser. They would know that what to expect of maybe I'll have to watch a scene with domestic abuse this episode. You know, like, it's not an excuse. No excuse for that at all. Another thing to complain about is they did something really, really weird where Roy is really mad because he lost this political debate. He even assaulted people in public, including a reporter, a female reporter. Basically, he just destroyed his entire career, which that actually was a really good scene. But he goes back to the ranch, and he marches to the shed that he's keeping Dorothy in while a Britney Spears song plays. And it was just so cringeworthy because you think, this makes sense in a way where, like, maybe if a fan on YouTube took this sequence that had different music originally, and then they put this song over top of it. But it's so shocking that, like, they would actually have a Britney Spears song over the top of the actual show, because it doesn't fit at all. It fits, like, in a fan cover type of way, but it doesn't fit in terms of Roy would never listen to Britney Spears. It would be the equivalent of if you have Michael Myers and he's walking down the street while, I don't know, while a disco song plays. Does that make any sense, guys? No, not at all. There's no excuse for that. And then he goes into the shed, and they don't show what happens at all. They just show the outside of the shed, and we hear some noises. And then they cut, and it's later on. And it's really hard to tell because of these pussified filmmakers. Did he rape her, or did he just beat her up? Because there's no actual excuse to not show him beating her up or just hint that he's going to rape her. Like, there's no excuse for that. Like, it was so lame, and it was such a bitch thing to do. Like, it just shows, like, this show's really not the same show that it once was. Like, they can't, and so I'm really confused. Like, did he rape her, or did he beat her? He was, like, on top of her, kind of, so, and she was on her bed, too, so, like, I don't understand. It's so bad. But let's talk about some more good things, too. Well, actually, there's not really much else good to talk about. Never mind. So, let's talk about more bad stuff. Some of the worst characters of the show's history, I would say number 1 is Indira. You know, I don't know the actress who plays Indira. I'm going to look at her picture right now because where did she come from? Because it seems like in this show, is she Indian? Ooh. Okay, she doesn't always make that face. You know, in this show, she's got good pictures. In this show, though, like, I'm pulling up, it's really funny because they have all these pictures of her. She's Rika Morjani, I believe. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But they've got all these sexy pictures, and she's smiling, and she's looking really happy. and she's looking like, like a really nice person. And then you have a picture of her in Fargo, and it's so funny because it's literally like smack dab in the middle of all these pictures. And it's just like she's got this like really strange like scowl on her face. And I swear, like, she had a scowl on her face the entire season. And it's like for no reason at all. Like, it's a really strange face too. And so her character was basically meaningless to the season. Like, she never really does anything to contribute to the story. She has this whole subplot. Well, she has two. She has a subplot where she's in debt, and then she has another subplot where she's got a really shitty husband who, he's basically like a stereotype, and he has this whole stupid monologue where he's like, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, and that was another stupid part of the season. But her character, like, I thought maybe they're trying to improve on the law enforcement characters because I have gotten a little sick of those characters in the show. They're always so perfect and so good, and nothing bad ever happens to them. Well, this character, she actually bends the law. But after she does that, she immediately changes her mind and stops bending the law, and then she also quits being a police officer. So her whole character, like, there was nothing to that makes me think like that she was a necessary addition to this season. And then another two characters to complain about are the FBI agents. The FBI agent characters were really stupid and dumb and really cartoonish, and I hated those characters. It's really sad because, like, the only good law enforcement character was Whit, and he was hardly in the season. So I would also like to mention what should have been in the season more. I would say, number one, do more stuff with Roy's election. Because they really only played with his election in the blanket episode. If you had done a lot of like story and subplot about his election and his opponents, maybe that could have been really interesting. If you had it to where Indira, she keeps on bending the law more and more, that would be really interesting. If you had actual backstory with humans and not puppets for Dorothy, that would be interesting. But instead they don't. You have 5 or whatever episodes where nothing happens. And it's really hard to get through those episodes because you're just thinking every time, like, is something going to happen this week finally? And then finally you had 2 really, really good episodes in Blanket and The Useless Hand. And what I think was like one of the most heartbreaking moments of the series, where, Gator, he had accidentally killed this old woman, and Munch kidnaps him and stabs his eyeballs out and blinds him, and then he brings him back to his father, and his father, he's just like, you're completely useless now, and his own father abandons him. And like that was like a really, really good scene. And there were so many good moments like that in the final episodes that made me think, like, how was the rest of the season so bad and you have moments like this that were really, really good? And then finally in episode 10, after they had all this shit happen that was terrible and it just was the worst. Sorry, my nose keeps itching. After all that, it's itching again. Shit. It was a little hair. There was a hair that was stuck on my nose, and the heater was blowing on it, so it was like tickling my nose. That's like a Fargo type of thing to happen, right? like a little hair tickling your nose. So in the finale, after all the terrible, unsatisfying stuff that happens, they actually have probably like the best ending of any Fargo season. They had this incredible final like 20 minutes where Munch comes to Dorothy's house to possibly kill her. And they have to basically de-escalate the situation by being as nice to him as possible and like trying to talk him down. And it's just like one of the greatest things I've ever seen, because it was so intense and at the same time it was so fun to watch, and you just couldn't help but smile because like you had this character and he just really wants to kill these people because he's so like mad, and like they just completely deconstruct his character through the course of an evening, and it ends with him, and he actually has like a character arc at the end of this season. And like it's sad because if they had given the same treatment to all these other characters like Indira, Lorraine, Danish, who gets killed, if they had given all these other characters some sort of character arc or a journey to go on, that would have really benefited the season. You know? So I don't know what much else to say. Really disappointing, really big letdown. I still really do like Dorothy though, even though you just gotta suspend disbelief and just accept that she's a badass because she's a badass. You know, there's no actual reason though. There's no actual reason. It's really disappointing because, yeah. And then Roy's character turned out to be another letdown, because in the finale you thought he's going to become like a real tough bad guy to beat. He's going to show why he is the villain of this season. But instead he gets shot like immediately, and then he turns into Michael Myers kind of, and it's like, what the fuck is this? So this season is a huge mixed bag. I would say that it's kind of mixed to negative, because you don't want to waste all this time with all these bad episodes, even though the first 2 episodes and then the 8th and 9th are really good. The rest of them are not really good at all. So, yeah, really disappointing. I should finally do a season 3 review sometime too, because I tell you guys, I really like season 3. A lot of people don't like that one. They say that it's the start of Fargo being bad. I would agree with that, kind of, because like that was the season where, you know, they have another issue too, these writers, where they just can't stop talking about their personal politics and like making characters like people that they hate in real life, like in terms of Roy kind of being like a Trumpy kind of guy. And, you know, he says he's libertarian, but he's not libertarian at all. And you know, there's stuff like that. Like, he's the opposite of libertarian. So, that's another issue. In terms of food, well, I'm gonna go to bed. That doesn't make any sense. See, I'm tired because earlier today we did an hour and like 10-minute long review of just one episode of this season, and now I'm reviewing all these hours, just tired. So anyways, this season, it's kind of like you have a great appetizer, a shitty entree, and a great dessert. And one of the times that actually kind of happened was when I went to Chili's this one evening. It was the night that I watched the card counter. And what I did was, first off, when I go to Chili's, I always get the street corn, the Mexican street corn. That's kind of like an appetizer for me. And I really love the Chili's street corn. It's very delicious. It's very spicy and seasoned really well. I could eat that all the time. That's how good it is. It made me feel like this is something fresh and new and exciting. But then the entree was terrible. The entree was, I can't even remember. It was like a smokehouse combo. It had like pieces of sausage. And then it had ribs. And then it had fries. And Chili's, they've really gone downhill with their fries. You know, their fries have kind of turned into a joke. They're very hard. A lot of them have black spots, which I really hate when it comes to fries. And then the sausage was way too salty, which you know that's bad when I say something's too salty. So that was terrible. They were also very dry. And then the ribs, the ribs. The ribs, like when I eat those ribs at Chili's, I think to myself, is this really ribs, or is this some kind of an animal that I've never heard of before? Like, is this a pangolin or a pandolin? You know, the animal where COVID came from? like, is that what the ribs are made out of at Chili's? Because that's what they taste like. You know, they just taste so strange. And they have this, like, sugary sauce. And this time the ribs were really bad, where they were really dried out. And it just, ugh. That was not a good night at Chili's. So the entree was terrible. And then for dessert, I didn't get anything from Chili's for dessert because I know for a fact that Chili is not good with desserts. They have their lava cake, which if you've seen a video of the lava cake being made, they just put it in the microwave. They don't actually cook it or anything. They just put it in the microwave and then they give it to you and say, fuck you. Here's your Chili's lava cake, bitch. Instead of that, I can't remember exactly what I had at the time. I've kind of gotten into this habit where in the summer through the fall, I have ice cream every night. And then in the fall through the winter, I have cookies and milk every night. I don't know why. It just kind of feels right and good to be on a routine so that I don't, like, overdo it all the time. So I guess I would say that, like, it is, the dessert is like 3 Oreos with 1 mint Oreo. Because you're expecting more Oreos, you know. I would say, like, usually I do about 6 or 7. And then I have, like, half a cup of milk. And so you're expecting a lot more Oreos. You're expecting a lot more. But before you got to that disappointing feeling, there were some good Oreos that you ate. And you enjoyed it. And you really liked it. Because, I mean, what's better than Oreos and milk? Or cookies and milk in general? So that's what I would rate Season 5 of Fargo. I will be doing a ranking next week of all the seasons. I would have Safi join me, but she doesn't remember anything. So it would just be like, oh yeah, there's that one season with the gangs. And then there's that one season with Billy Bob. And I can't even remember Season 3. Oh, obviously the worst is Season 4. You know, that's what she would do. So I will be ranking all the seasons next week. I will also be ranking the characters of Season 5. And I will be doing, and now this is a big reveal, I was really inspired by the female characters this season. I was really inspired by Indira and her scowl And, like, just every single scene where she's in, she sees her husband doing something, and she's like, yeah. She makes this this mean face, and it's like a cutie patootie face. And then you had Lorraine. And she's trying to be like a pretentious theater student who's trying to really do an accent, and she just gets to be like a girl boss the whole season. Maximum girl boss, maximum Lorraine. But she's just really like a theater student who's like doing a weird thing, and I didn't like it at all. But she is Jennifer Jason Leigh, and she is really fucking hot, so... And then also you had Dorothy, who's like... She's probably, like... Because of her badass nature, she's probably one of the sexiest characters ever. Because being badass is just as sexy as, like, being physically attractive to me. But you don't have to be badass, but it's a plus. And so I was really inspired by these female characters. Even Roy's new wife, you know, she's a looker and she's a hitter. Because she'll hit you too. And she'll whatever. I'm just joking around. But anyways, I was inspired to do a Fuck, Marry, Kill of Fargo. Of all 5 seasons, the characters. So, you know, that's going to be a lot of fun. Are you guys excited for that? I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that sooner? Fargo, Fuck, Marry, Kill. So anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of the season. I know that I sounded mostly negative towards the season. That's because the finale left a really bad taste in my mouth. And when a finale does that, it kind of sours your taste and experience of the whole season. Because if you rewatch the season again, you rewatch it knowing it's going to lead to the disappointing finale. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.